Today, we're diving into the dual impact of being autistic and physically disabled. We're going to be drawing a lot from the incredible work of author Wendy Lawson to really explore what it means to navigate a world that, well, often just isn't built for you, and the amazing resilience that takes. In this quote from Kat, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It's about that constant, invisible effort, that mental energy spent just decoding a world that so many others seem to move through without a second thought. It's this extra layer of processing that's running all the time. All right, so let's set the stage here. Autism almost never exists in a vacuum. It very often co-occurs with physical disabilities, and that creates this intersection of challenges, some you can see, and a whole lot that you can't. And this dual impact is just profoundly misunderstood by the wider world. And here's the fundamental issue. Our world, everything, from how we're expected to communicate to how our cities are built, it's all based on this default human, a person who is both neurotypical and able-bodied. So, if you don't fit into that very specific mold, the world just isn't designed for you. Okay, so let's dig into a really core cognitive difference here, because it's absolutely crucial for understanding the autistic experience. We're talking about the concept of a monotropic mind versus a polytropic one. This slide does a pretty great job of visualizing these two different ways of processing things. So a monotropic mind, which is really common in autism, is like a single-lane road. You're deeply focused, all traffic going in one direction. A polytropic mind, on the other hand, is more like a multi-lane highway, right? You can switch lanes, juggle different thoughts, and manage multiple streams of attention a lot more easily. And that single-lane road analogy is just so powerful. When you're deep in a passion or focused on a single task, it's a superhighway. It is incredibly efficient, but the moment unexpected demands or social cues or new tasks try to merge, bam, you get a massive traffic jam. Everything just grinds to a halt, gets totally congested, and can feel incredibly overwhelming. And this is what that single-lane road looks like in the real world. For Mary, one doctor's appointment takes up the entire road for the whole day. It's not just a little block in her calendar, it is a complete roadblock that just consumes all her focus, all her energy. You can see why she says it's exhausting. So if that's what's happening in the mind, how does it connect with the body? What happens when those internal messages, the signals your body is sending you, get lost in translation? Well, this brings us to the challenge of interoception. So interoception is basically our body's internal messaging system. You can think of it as our eighth sense. It's the thing that tells you, hey, you're hungry, or your bladder is full, or even helps you identify that a certain feeling in your chest is anxiety. It's fundamental to just about everything. Now, for many autistic people, these internal signals can be really muffled or just plain confusing. This can mean you might not notice you're thirsty until you're already dehydrated, or you might not realize you need the bathroom until it's an absolute emergency. It can also make it incredibly hard to tell a doctor where you're hurting, and all of this has really serious health implications. And here is where monotropism and interoception just collide in this fascinating and kind of scary way. When Lawson talks about being in severe physical pain, but the second he starts giving a lecture, that single-lane road of intense focus just completely takes over and overrides the pain signals. The pain is still there, of course, but his brain literally stops paying attention to it until that focus task is done. So when you put all of this together, this internal experience and the external world, you get this huge gap in understanding. And when a society doesn't get these differences, it fails to listen. And that leads to devastating consequences, like years of misdiagnosis and systemic ableism.
Just take a second and look at this journey. 70 years. Decades of very real physical pain just being dismissed as growing pains. A serious misdiagnosis of schizophrenia as a teenager. It took until his mid-adult years to even identify his neurotype, and all the way until age 72 to finally get a correct diagnosis for his chronic inflammatory arthritis. This isn't just one person's story. It's a glaring example of a systemic failure.
And it's not always these huge medical dramas. Sometimes it's the small, everyday things that say so much. This experience at the cinema is such a powerful example of everyday ableism. It's not about people being intentionally mean. It's about invisibility. When you physically exist lower than a typical person's eye level, when you move through the world differently, you can just be ignored, pushed right past. And that's the key thing about ableism, right? It's not always about obvious prejudice. It's built into our world, in the buildings without ramps, yeah, but also in our assumptions. It's that comment, but you don't look disabled, as if there's only one way disability is supposed to look. This brings us to a really important idea that kind of flips the script on all this. It's called the double empathy problem. And what it says is that the communication breakdown isn't a one-way street. It's not a deficit in the autistic person. It's a mutual misunderstanding. It's a two-way street where both neurotypes are struggling to bridge a gap in lived experience.
So, what's the takeaway from all this? If the problem is systemic, if it's baked into our attitudes and our environment, then the solution can't possibly be to just expect one person to adapt. The focus has to shift completely.
I absolutely love this quote from the late activist Stella Young. It just says it all perfectly. The responsibility is not on the person in the wheelchair to just be more positive and magically overcome the stairs. The responsibility is on society to build a ramp. The barrier is the stairs, not the wheelchair.
And that's the bottom line, isn't it? We have to change the entire conversation from trying to fix the individual to fixing the environment. This means we have to start valuing people for their humanity, not for how well they can conform to neurotypical, able-bodied standards. The real goal has to be accommodation and true acceptance.
You know, we've only just scratched the surface of the incredible insights in Wen Lawson's work, but it leaves us with this fundamental question, one we should all carry with us. Are we really listening to the autistic experience? And if we start, what are we prepared to change?